Good afternoon, and welcome to the panel that we have organized after we've done our annual survey. The survey was a partnership between EPRA and Yardi, and was related to PropTech. The goal of the survey is to do it annually. We started this in 2019, but for obvious reasons we put it on hold for a couple of years. But the intent is to do this annually, where we will be focusing on questions about the strategy and vision on PropTech, on technology, to measure or have an idea about the adoption and the impact that PropTech and technology has on the industry, the obstacles that are being perceived or that are being experienced, and future plans. In the 2022 version, we had 85 respondents. Half of them were C-level, and also quite a high percentage were director level respondents. The respondents were active in all asset classes and in total active in 25 European countries. So overall, I would say a very good representative group of people. Talking about a very good and representative group of people, we're going to have a panel discussion with the following people here. So we have Kirsi Simola. Kirsi is CIO at Citycon. We have Achille Simo, who is the EMEA Head of Business Development Valuation Advisory at JLL. Paul Glibbery, CIO at Grainger, and Bastian Zarske Bueno, who's the Head of Corporate Ventures and Innovation at Swiss Prime Site. Also joining us here is Andreas Hofmann, from Cromwell. Before we start with the actual discussion around PropTech, my question is, what is PropTech to you? What is your thing with technology? So let us start with the only lady in our panel today, Kirsi. What is your thing with technology?
Well, for me, technology is an enabler, first and foremost. It should never become the purpose. It's just the way to get there. It's the how. As long as we have clear goals, clear strategies, we can get to our goals in a more efficient manner, in sometimes more straightforward manner, sometimes more valuable manner. But we just need to know what to deploy. So for me, pure and simple, enabler.
Very good, thank you. The other CIO, Paul?
Yeah, I think for me, and I completely agree with Kirsi, but it's also an opportunity to change how we do things. And I think it can be a vehicle for change and transformation and disruption. So I think the challenge is the implementation of that, particularly if you've got a clear direction where there's a piece of technology, as Kirsi says, which enables you to do something more efficiently or better, that's fine. But if you want to do something fundamentally different, you probably need to have a slightly more experimental mindset to do stuff. And I think we tend to want to build a perfect solution and deploy that to deliver an outcome as per a specific sort of business benefits or ROI. And sometimes with, particularly with the rate of change of technology, if there's an opportunity to experiment and see whether something will benefit you, that's a really great thing to do. And it's something that lives in the technology space. We haven't really got that culture in the property space at the moment, because obviously people don't like to spend money and get no return from it. But if you could buy a little, test a little, implement a little, and accept that you might fail a little, that's fine, because you're pushing the boundaries and experimenting. And I think if you've got a clear view of what you're trying to achieve and this technology does it, that's fine. But if you want to push the boundaries and do something a little bit different, we need a little bit more freedom to experiment and do stuff. So I think the exciting thing is technology is developing so rapidly. You know, we don't know what will be available in a few years' time. So it's a question of how do you maintain that? Because if you build the perfect solution today, it ain't going to be perfect in 3 to 5 years' time. So we need to balance that investment in getting the right answer, especially the mostly right answer, and making sure we try and future-proof things. So it's such a dynamic environment. I think that's part of the excitement of why we're talking so much about it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Paul. Achille, as I would say the data person, what is your thing with technology?
Technology may be also the topic around the PropTech and what you mentioned. And for me, this topic is something about research and development, full stop. I would put that in this way, because it's the kind of research and development department that used to be internal, but that tend to be externalized. And in our survey last year, we shows that maybe we are talking about something around 8,000 PropTech company globally, most of them being London, New York, and so on, meaning providing this kind of services in terms of enablement, but also in terms of solutions, meaning when you think about the PropTech providing services in the construction area, or maybe efficiency of facility and so on. Meaning the point that I'm willing to mention is to say, yes, this is, research and development on two sides, meaning enablement in terms of business, but also in terms of solutions on the concrete building side.
Thank you, Achille. And Bastian, what is your thing? You're on mute, by the way.
Thank you, Richard. I think, for us, like PropTech's taken very different roles in whatever context we collaborate with them. I mean, they can be providers, they can be customers, they can be, for sure, are in the most cases like pacemakers for us, and also co-creators helping us like to experiment things, just as Paul also described it earlier. And last but not least, looking at it from a corporate venture capital perspective, there are also investment opportunities for us, like to grow, into new markets, for instance, but also into new business directions and grow more sustainably after all. So let me just quickly explain that a little bit. I mean, PropTechs, yes, for us are a major sort of access point to innovation, to new technologies, etc., that we are either not able yet to develop ourselves, or where we simply don't see sort of our core skills, and where we simply believe that it makes more sense, to take that very also resource efficient access to collaboration, to co-creation, and to make these kind of things work in different contexts. For us, open innovation in general, to put it that way, plays a major role, just because we are aware of the fact, and I think also Paul was describing that a little bit, our industry doesn't have that DNA, let's say, of being super rich in experimentation and having that culture of reinvesting R&D spendings and budgets in the millions on a yearly basis, which is something that happens in other industries, though, and where we can certainly learn from that. But until we get there, I think that the collaboration with PropTechs can be very, very efficient and leading to the objectives that we aim for.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Bastian. And Andreas, would you like to add something? You're on mute.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think we have to build a bridge between the PropTech and our industry, to follow up on what Bastian said. And I think we have to come from the user needs and from the pain points in the industry. Obviously, we have many pain points actually growing, and PropTech solutions can provide a solution. Yesterday, I visited a building which needs repositioning, a huge mixed-use building in Paris. And the asset manager has a need to provide many more services as a way to differentiate this building. And here, PropTech, the app, the tenant engagement app with all the processes around that, to book a conference room, to see what's on the restaurant, to make sure that you go to a restaurant, there's no queue, to incentivize this. So all the solutions, actually, the technical solutions came through the need for differentiation and to provide services and community management. And I think this is the right way to approach PropTech. We have not to take a technology and then find a problem. We have to first identify the problem and then select the right technology to provide a solution.
Yeah, and it is very interesting that you say that. And what you mention is very often, it's existing technology, but finding ways to deploy that in different industries, but also in real estate. Let us move on now to the survey and to the results. Achille, what was the first or the most important thing that stood out? What do you feel like when you were reading the results?
Yeah, I would say the first one that we realize is maybe the kind of discrepancy between all the client or all the company participate to the survey, saying that PropTech is something that's very important to me. I would say something around 60% and so on. And on the other side, meaning the spending or meaning the willingness to spend, and maybe to spend some effort, but also some financial effort on that. Meaning that's why it's kind of discrepancy between, I will put that in this way, the importance, but also what the people are doing. That's something that's maybe very, very interesting, and that's why we're saying, meaning we need to investigate a bit more why we have this kind of gap between perceptions, but also what the people are doing with them.
Yeah, it is. You're referring to 60% of the respondents, say that tech has a strong impact, has had a strong impact in the last 5 years. But if you then ask, are you investing in tech in the next 5 years? 46% says it's a low priority, and 38% is not sure how much they will be spending. So that's the discrepancy you're referring to.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that's the main point that we notice, and that's
Okay, very good. Bastian, do you agree, or do you have a similar observation, or maybe a different one?
No, for sure. I mean, I must also say that that was probably the most striking point when reading through the survey and seeing the results here. And I think this is also sort of covering what we see in real life, and not just in the surveys, right? There is still some discrepancy between having a lot of good ideas and emotions about where things could be moving, but then adjusting both organization, but also budget structures and so on and so forth is then again still a different thing. And until we get to a point where, I mean, these ambitions are then again also declared, let's say, in personal sort of objectives and KPIs, like for the single asset manager, real estate developer, whomever you take within a real estate organization, that is then again probably the next step that we're hoping for now, and that will enable that change also from an organizational point of view. In addition to that, what I found interesting is that apparently many organizations are still struggling a little bit with the question where they can associate or let's say put the emphasis on PropTech solutions within the organization. So who's taking care of these partnerships? Who's making sure that they're taking the best strategic sort of return on these collaborations? How do you actually evaluate the success of these projects? What are the metrics? I think there is still a lot of insecurity in the market about how to approach that. Who takes care of it? Do you have specialists in the organization? Do you sort of try to attribute that to every single sort of person in the core structures and organization? And then how do you evaluate over what period of time? I think Paul was saying that also in the introduction, right? I mean, we're used to invest money and are pretty sure about like the returns that we can expect in the years to come, and obviously like in more agile setups and especially in the collaboration with digital but also non-digital PropTechs, and this might be a bit more difficult because sometimes we're just pioneering, we're going new ways, and we still need to establish with which KPIs, etc., are we going to measure them. And there again, this leads back to that ambition of experimenting a little bit more, and then also clearly openly discuss within an organization who's the right person to take care of this. Do we actually enable the overall organization to take care of these kind of projects? But obviously that comes along then with a lot of training effort and making sure that everyone has understood what it takes, like to run a project, for instance, with a startup, which then again, obviously from a cultural point of view, is a challenge in itself.
Yeah. So if I can put the two of your answers together, so one is the discrepancy between finding it important and not planning to invest. And I would like to go a little bit deeper on that in a minute to ask about the why. And the second point that you mentioned was what is success? What is a successful implementation? So the definition of success. So if we start with that first item, so we all find it very important as an industry. But we're not willing to invest. Is that how come, Kirsi?
I think that's the $1 million question. Honestly, I think it has a lot to do with the nature of our industry. We are in a very tangible business. We have a building that is very physical, and this technology that we're talking about is very intangible. It's air, basically, when you think about it. Even though there are complex things happening in the background. And that might be one of the hurdles that we need to come across first, that when you see something, you believe it more easily than if I come and show you a PowerPoint presentation. I have this really nice technology that will solve all your issues. Just give me €1 million and you're done. So we don't have those applications yet. And if we do, we are not maybe openly sharing the successes, certainly not the failures. So I think that's part of the culture in the industry, not just individual companies. But if we could bring more transparency, more open communication, and more sharing, I think we would be onto something and conquering this first hurdle. And that's a starting point. We all acknowledge it's important. We know there are opportunities. Back to Andreas' point, we need to have the issue first, or a benefit that we are trying to reach, and then marry these two together. But at the end of it, I think it's a leadership topic. We need to start a bit pushing all of ourselves into this uncomfortable zone that is not tangible. So that's my thinking on this one.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Paul, do you have anything to add or completely disagree with Kirsi on?
No, I completely agree, Kirsi. And I think it's a really great point on leadership, because it is a leadership issue, and it's getting that recognition and understanding. And I also really like that metaphor of we live in a very tangible physical business, and what we do is not always quite so tangible. And there's an element of risk, right? IT programs have got a history of not showing up on time and delivering to cost. So I think there's a little bit of everything. But one thing I think from the survey that really comes out and gives a little bit of a positive for all of us is that the fact that 70% of respondents recognise that technology has become a business topic. And I think that's super important, because that is probably the most important development in terms of accelerating the adoption of technology. So the fact that it's seen as a business problem, or it will help to resolve business problems, that is absolutely the way we want the business to pull the technology from us, not us being pushed against a closed door to try and get it across the line. So I do think there are really some great feedback in the survey that suggests that we are getting to a tipping point. But again, I think, as Kirsi says, we are still quite immature in terms of how we adopt it, how we share, how we broadcast success. And there are a lot of great PropTech companies, but again, a lot of us want to do stuff at scale. We don't want to do it at an asset level. We want to do it at scale. So I suppose we want PropTech companies to think bigger, to solve a bigger problem, and we need to help in terms of that. And it probably comes back to we don't have our own individual R&D, so we've got lots of people trying to solve the problems they think we have. We probably just need to engage more. So again, I think this is a great forum to have some of these discussions.
Okay.
And I think we could even go a little further here. If I remember what Andreas also said regarding, I mean, the need to differentiate more in today's like increasing also competitive environment. And I think most of us are probably aware of the fact that we're, especially also after Corona as a catalyst, moving a bit away from that location sort of mantra, which was so omnipresent since many years. But I think that everything around, and if you follow also Oxford research on that topic, etc., we are probably going more in a direction of sort of location analytics and services. And when it comes to these two additional points that will define the value of real estate in the future, then I think it's primarily also PropTechs that can help us to establish new offers in that context, in a sense.
Sorry, go ahead, Achille.
Maybe on this one, it's also very important to have this perception of PropTech, not just for the sake of PropTech, meaning not just because it's a PropTech, but to clearly think about why are we willing to do in the business itself, and maybe to try to figure out how the PropTech could enable us maybe to solve or to fix the situations. Meaning otherwise we are going to solve problems that won't necessarily exist if we maybe have had a different approach to that. I think that's also something that's very important. And from what we have observed and also what arises from the survey and so on, I had the feeling as well that maybe it's more about to just have the view on the PropTech for creating the kind of technical solution and so on. But at a certain level, that could be also a great opportunity to do topic very differently. I don't know if there may be a good example of that, but when you think about WeWork, something like that, meaning a kind of space as a service and so on, meaning it's a new way of using spaces that is just enabled because of the technical solution behind. Meaning what we maybe try also in what we are doing to push is not just to have this element around, I would say, fixing the technical topic, but also to use this element around market understanding, faster, accurate, and so on, market understanding and market comprehension, deriving the right lessons, to use as an opportunity maybe to generate new need and maybe to activate spaces in a different way.
Mm-hmm. And that's an interesting point that you raise, Achille. And also, in going further on what Bastian mentioned, it's so the data that are currently being gathered and being analyzed are, let's say, at property and lease level. But Achille, isn't what you're describing that's data at a completely different level? That's data at an end user level, at a consumer level. Isn't that a completely different ballgame?
Yeah, I would tend to say that when you speak about the data and so on, it's also a broader topic, because before we talked about the data, we need maybe to take about data category, about what are the data, what are the requirements of that. And I would tend to say, to say that, yes, of course, the availability, the possibility to have those information, to collect those information would enable us to better understand some need and maybe to derive the right lessons. Yes, of course. But before we go into this field and so on, it's also very important to say that when we think about data collection, to say, why are we willing to collect the data? What are the targets and so on? And then you could maybe better have the possibility to frame what you need, and maybe not to collect the data and you realize maybe I need just less than what I've collected, and because that also increased the complexity. And then we need a clear alignment in this area with the main purpose, and the purpose should at a certain level not just driven by the technical application, by the solution, but just by the need that yes, by the need at the beginning, meaning the purpose at the beginning.
Yeah, it's I'm working for Yardi, and Yardi is a very comprehensive platform. But even in such a situation, I like to think that this Yardi implementation is only 20 or 25 or maybe 30% of the total topic, because the rest is basically creativity and change? Is that, if we are moving then to, the change and what the definition of success is, what is, why are we adopting PropTech, Paul? And what are we trying to achieve as an industry? How do we define success?
Well, I think the success will obviously be driven by the business metrics in terms of whether you can do more with the same, you can improve your profitability, or you can improve your speed in terms of strategic speed and also speed in terms of responding to customers. So I think that different users will have a different view of what their priorities are. But I think in terms of using I'd say data in particular, we've got a company, or sorry, a business that has a lot of knowledge and experience, really massive wealth of experience and knowledge, which is all in people's heads. We've also got a load of data, and our ability to correlate that data and then use that data to underpin business decisions is quite a cultural change, because we've got a lot of experts who've got all that knowledge in their heads. And when you put all that data and start cross-referencing it and enriching it with other sources, you might come to some different decisions that your experts have come to. And therefore, there's instantly a challenge in terms of, is the data right? And, people who are used to making fundamental decisions being challenged. And I think that's just part of a cultural shift in terms of where we want to get to. But there's an opportunity to change the business from that in terms of driving genuine data decisions based on really solid data, and whether that's customer data in terms of really understanding who lives in your properties, what is the affordability of those people, why do they leave, are you actually leasing to the right people in the first instance, can you identify an ideal tenant. There's a whole wealth of things that you can do, and you can also turn that back onto your supply chain in terms of, am I being sufficient as I can? Have I got consistency across my supply chain and efficiency? So I think data is a really big issue, but you're starting to challenge a lot of people that have been doing this perhaps without the underpinning data. So I think that's one area that we see is the cultural challenge of introducing any technology solution, but particularly when you're trying to drive things from data, which hasn't been done so previously. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges.
Okay, Kirsi, you mentioned leadership, huh? And or the lack of leadership. And if I give you the example of, and yes, I know for all the real experts out there that Apple didn't invent the smartphone, but if it wasn't for Steve Jobs, we use this thing for making phone calls. Now we use it for everything but making phone calls. So is leadership and is success not enough defined at the moment in the real estate industry, along the lines of all the problems that we don't know that we have, or all the problems that we don't have yet? And is there a very limited focus on the problems that we have in our day-to-day business, and we try to do the same thing that we do today, but just a little bit more efficient or just a little bit more effective? And shouldn't the bar be much higher, in a sense that really doing different things? So what is your view on this?
Well, I think if we just think about our industry in general, we don't have a really fast pace when it comes to disruptions. Usually it's mostly finance related. Now we have energy. So we have been lucky, in my opinion, to enjoy a stable environment to operate in. So there has not been like a drive or incentive to look at things from a different perspective, because the equation has been stable and remained pretty much the same. Certainly not many parameters in the business equation have changed at the same time. So I think that is one thing, that we have this nice saying that when it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that might be one way to look at it. But then again, I enjoy listening to the younger generations. They come with these amazing ideas. and I'm stuck in my thinking pattern because I have been accustomed to doing it certain way. So
you're trying to manage the disruption.
Exactly. And how do you pick the kind of right disruption for your company, your business? I mean, that's the trick. We cannot all be apples. We certainly cannot be. But I don't have a silver bullet to this one, but I think it starts from inquiring, not assuming. I think that's the first thing. Not relying on the same parameters that we have had stable for a long time. We also need to start to look at the parameters. Are they the right parameters? You mentioned KPIs earlier on many contexts. Are they the right KPIs for this type of decision making? And then we might be onto something, but that all requires leadership. And I'm not saying that it has to be the most senior top management in the company or the middle management or no, we all can lead by example. And that is what I mean here. We all need to lead by example in order to be successful in this equation.
Thank you. And we start receiving questions from the audience, which we will try to address in a minute. But before we do that, Bastian, I'm interested in your view on this. You know, this change from your role. Do you have a different view on this? What is success? You know, and should disruption be managed? But most of all, I have a million questions, so I start rambling now. But what is success in your view, and what is your view with regards to disruption?
Yeah, so I think like our approach at Swiss Prime Site, which is still the third largest listed real estate group in Switzerland, comprising quite a few employees that you're trying to take with you with all your different activities, etc. So that has always been sort of our approach and our aim to not just sort of innovate to the external parties that we're collaborating with, but also making sure that we can take the internal culture and our employees with us on that journey. Obviously, you can't manage to do that all of a sudden, taking into account that there's more than 2,000, but you can definitely offer and sort of found platforms, internal platforms, such as our own startup acceleration program, with which we managed over the past 3 years to engage with more than 3,500 startups across Europe, actually, and beyond. And we've made sure to also compile internal juries that sit together, which are topic experts, which are people from the leadership teams, etc., to make sure that we can get them into direct touch with these type of entrepreneurs, but also prop techs, so that they can sort of make their own experiences when exchanging and collaborating with them. So that has been sort of part of our internal also value proposition, saying that, I mean, we see them as innovation catalysts externally, but I mean, if we are honest, right, I mean, if we want to exist for the long run and have a very attractive also offering towards the outside market, at some point we should make sure we also foster our internal innovation capabilities, right? So the way by, you know, taking open innovation approaches, etc., should, in my belief, like only be sort of a way to bridge certain developments which still need to take place internally. So I think, yeah, the leadership component is a very relevant one, and internally at Swiss Prime Site, and I think one of the questions here in the Q&A is also referring to that. Yeah, we did manage to find an organizational structure, which is making sure that the literally top level and namely the group CEO is taking care of that topic like himself, making sure that we as a team of corporate ventures and innovation managers, like we are being heard. And obviously that helps then again also like to make other people in the organization move that so far felt, okay, maybe we don't have to. And I mean, there's, you know, you have to have both approaches. Like I'm a big fan of making sure we can enable like bottom up and give everyone who wants like the possibility to join in to that movement to some extent. And then still you also need sort of like the governance and the belief and the trust sort of the top management to make sure that they are sort of, setting the organization, but also, as I said, like personal objectives, etc., in accordance to these overall ambitions, which we have in the context of innovation. So yeah, having said that, it's all about having that sort of dual approach of making sure the projects work out, and you've predefined actually what the success is. And depending on the topic and depending on the timeline, I mean, the successes can be very different. So like obviously the KPIs needed. Sure that it's not just you and your direct team members, that you get a broader sort of group of people, departments across different teams that join in on that belief and vision, and then you can make also larger organizations move after some time.
I think that also well, it answers two of the questions that came in, because it's also about there's a question about what are the biggest motivating factors. Does someone else want to respond to what Bastian just said? It's Paul, Achille.
Maybe I would add the point to say I think technology is not like the cherry on the cake, something separate, additional, and so on. I would think that's the butter in the structures, meaning it's very important to take that in different approach, because I mentioned it's about research and development, it's about an enablement, it's about combinations with the business and jointly with the business to create the solution that enable the business to meet the target. And if we have this kind of approach, that's clear that yes, you need first, meaning people dedicated to think about the topic, but you need as well a connections with the business in order to make sure that we have a joint approach and that we are not just developing something separate from the need of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have this kind of perceptions and you come to the topic about the metrics, how to measure success, you need that. Yes, I think that at the end, the success will not just be measures related to the technology, but it would also be measured to the success of the company itself. Meaning for us, it's very important. And we had the question about the organization at JLL. What we said that we have a JLLT entity, which is a separate entity, but there's a lot of connections between the two. And we have also within JLL Technologies, another entity who is doing what Bastian mentioned earlier, investing in other company externally, will give us an additional possibility to engage with the creativity, external creativities, but also to connect the creativity externally to the client landscape that we have to provide as well solution to our internal client, because we're managing many assets. Meaning, I will put that in this way, that's kind of organization that we need, meaning a kind of multi-layers organization, multi-touch point internally, externally, in order to be successful engaged in the area.
What Bastian and Achille are describing are a lot of like people that are pushing for change, a lot of enthusiasm. Kirsi, you mentioned the leadership, which I assume is like C-level, who is taking a direction, or who is clearly communicating to the organization, this is the type of organization that we want to be in the future, and this is the direction we're going. Paul, what is your view on this? Is that, what is more important, a strong CEO that says this is the way, or is it more a bottom-up approach?
Well, I think both can be complementary, but I was just looking at the first question around the sort of structures for implementing PropTech. I think there's a couple of dangers that people can fall into. It's very easy for a PropTech project to very quickly become an IT project, and the business will stand on the sideline spectating. So I think it's really important to get engagement from the business. And I think it's sponsorship, it's business sponsorship, because actually you're trying to deliver a business outcome. So it's important to have a business owner that steps in and says, I own this, and we, the technologists, are in support of delivering that outcome. So that's super important. So, and again, people can't do this off the side of their desks, because if they do, either the business as usual suffers, and you don't deliver your project.
But
so
is it okay?
Sorry.
Is it okay that, because it is disruptive, is it okay that the outcome is, not specifically identified, but we're going in that direction. It's
Well,
chasing
again,
a vision,
I think
maybe.
that depends on the appetite, the risk appetite, and the willingness to experiment. I think you need to have some baseline of what you're trying to achieve, and normally what we find is that there are some additional benefits you might not have envisaged. And I think also, so in terms of creating the capacity for change, which is important rather than getting people to do it on top of their day job, that's really important. But it's also important that the people that are delivering that change are willing to challenge the status quo, because I've seen what happened in other companies I've worked at where people bring some new technology in and they build their old processes. They build their old world in the new technology.
Yeah,
So that's great. That's exactly what we want, just what we've done for the last 20 years. And they miss the opportunity to transform and change and take themselves forward. So it's important that in any change adoption process, you have people who are both understand the business, but are willing to challenge the business and change and make things change. And I think it's that technology in of itself, as we said before, isn't the important thing. It's the ability to embrace it and adopt it and drive change in the business. It's actually that change and transformation of the culture of the business that's the hard part. You can buy technology from the Apple store, but it's the ability to embed it in the business and make the change and bring people with you on that journey that this change is good. And just to follow on to the second question, what is the biggest motivating factor? I think for us specifically, it's about creating capacity for our people. So if we've got processes that are inefficient today and we're trying to scale and double our business over the next few years, if we can create the capacity in our back office, we don't have to hire a bunch more people to do those same jobs. So for us, we're empowering people to be able to do more with the time and the tools that they have. So I do think it's that whole change and getting people to understand why you're doing something, because people obviously feel when you bring in technology or you're seeking to make efficiencies, it's to reduce headcount or to change things. I think in our business, because of the demand we're seeing, it's a real opportunity to create capacity so you can do more with your teams. It's a very exciting time. But we're all learning, I think, and it's to Kirsi's point earlier. We haven't had to move at speed, at pace. We haven't had multiple dynamics changing us, and I think there's an opportunity now to sort of just increase the pace, not to move at the pace of some technology companies, but just to increase the pace a little bit and move faster. And whoever does that will be at a significant advantage.
I read this morning an editorial piece of a local Dutch PropTech publication, and he said the disruption in the real estate industry goes slower than we hoped, but faster than we feared. So you just mentioned that we're living in exciting times, but is that something that is is a view that is very broad within your organizations, I would say, because one of the outcomes of the survey was also that one of the obstacles of adopting PropTech is that the respondents see their own organizations as not very mature when it comes from a tech perspective. So their ability to adopt PropTech is limited because their own lack of maturity. So isn't it more that is it other times as excited as we all say they are?
I think they are. I mean, from a personal perspective, I'm very lucky because our leadership is very bought into it. They doesn't mean they're writing a blank check or giving me unlimited R&D funds. I'm not there, but they're supporting and they understand the potential. And across the business, there's an understanding, but we are still wrestling with a lot of legacy inertia and this is how we've done it. This is how we do stuff. So I think even with a good leadership team with a great vision, you still have to bring the whole organization with you, and you have to demonstrate success. And if you don't, that takes you a pace backwards. So because if you and I think that's one thing. If you fail, then you sort of lose a bit of credibility in terms of trying to do the next thing. And we've got to get over that and just sort of move a little bit faster. But I do think it's exciting. You know, we're having this conversation, and just from some of the feedback in the survey, you know, and I think we'll get to a tipping point. Yeah, we're sort of building and building, but we'll get to a tipping point when everyone will be racing to get across the line. So I think it is. We're laying the foundations, and there's a lot of great work going on, but we've still got a long way to go. And I think, you know, the more we engage our businesses and our business leaders, and I suppose there may be something that we could take from the financial sector. For many years within banking, a lot of rising stars were moved into IT because there was a recognition of the importance of the infrastructure, the security of that infrastructure, the speed of transactions to their business, because the banking became IT. That was the business. And maybe we need to sort of seed some of our technology with some of our younger staff who are coming into the business, who actually are very comfortable with technology because they use it every day, and sort of get them to take it back into and rotate people through the technology parts of the business to give them a better insight of what they could do in terms of their core disciplines. So I think we just need to be a bit more imaginative in terms of how we spread the word.
Maybe I come on to that, Andreas, you may have something to add which goes in this direction, but I always tend to say that some people tend to say you don't need to fix something that's not broken. And when you look at the situation in the real estate market the last 10 years and so on, you had the feeling that nothing is broken, and therefore there is no need to do something more than, yes, I think that maybe that could be one of the elements. I tend to say that maybe a second case, I would say innovations is the ambitions, meaning the willingness to save the world, to do something. That's what people in the Silicon Valley are doing. But in other cases, it's also a matter of reactions with challenges, reaction, for example, what we have to do today, nowadays, the reaction to the climate emergency and so on. And we are seeing in the market a lot of PropTech maybe that are created in order to help, meaning because of those challenges that we are facing, because of the challenge related to working from home and so on to the office sectors, because of the challenge in the retail sectors, I can't imagine that it's going to be something triggering the reaction that we need in order to start to develop and to embrace the innovations and to embrace and to invest maybe in research and development in order to address that.
Yeah, and I think like from our experience, if I may just add to that, it's literally about sort of tearing down the walls. Sometimes it's even invisible walls. It's just cultural walls, and it's just people that are afraid of getting in touch with these PhD founders coming from a completely different discipline, just because many people haven't been working that interdisciplinary in the past. And I think there is great potential in that for sure, and we should just stimulate also their potential, their needs. And on the sideline, maybe just as a personal note here, it does help indeed if every now and then you manage also to sign the typical lease contract with a PropTech company, because that feeds back into the core business, and that's the type of stuff that has been working so well for the past decades. And I think it's literally about, you know, finding these win-win situations in which you make like both sides feel comfortable at the table, and then we can definitely learn from each another.
Yeah, I fully agree. And sorry, Richard, I want to add one more thing to this topic. I think the silos is one thing that we need to tear down. Absolutely, that's also probably a tradition in the industry, but I think it's also, at least to some extent, a language question. And I'm not saying Finnish to Swedish or to French, I'm saying tech to IT, because all of the services nowadays that we buy, they incorporate an IT element. And it sounds all easy when you are like listening to the sales pitch, but then when you have to implement it, then you get the IT jargon and you're like a deer in headlamps at that point in time. So we need an interpreter in between, and we need that interpreter from day one, the moment you hear the sales pitch, because you have that issue that you want to fix or a benefit that you want to reach. You have that already. We have like a task force mentality that we should put into play really, really early on. And then I think we are able to tear down those walls, we are able to progress, and then maybe we learn the language both ways, tech into IT and buildings.
It's Andreas, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, if I may add, we shouldn't be too bad about our industry. Actually, in the end, we are regional investment managers, and I want to go back to the study that you did. 32% of the respondents said they are missing the ROI of PropTech solution, and I think this is the major reasons why we haven't seen the take up yet. So, despite all the barriers that we have discussed in the last 20 minutes, this is, in my opinion, the main reason. However, to give a positive spin, I do believe that there will be a pull factor coming from regulation for ESG, because we will be pressured by the regulators to implement sustainability initiatives. And for that, you need a lot of data. And to be honest, without technology, we cannot tackle this. So you need tools to collect that data, to structure this data, and to draw the right conclusions. And we don't have much time because the regulation is really tightening. So we maybe have a window of 1 or 2 years to get ourselves organized, to understand what is the big game and how do we position ourselves, and what do we have to do and how much does it cost, and is it economic viable or not, and then take the right decisions, wholesale, invest, etc. So I think ESG will be the blockbuster application that will drive a lot of technology into the real estate organization.
Yeah, I think this is exactly where the real estate industry again can bring in like all its skills it has in terms of long-term thinking, etc. I mean, our company is also a real estate investor and developer. So, I mean, we're used to put down money today and wait a couple of years until it gets back, in a different format. But I mean, this is, I think, something, especially nowadays, that we're moving more and more into that hybrid world in every extent. I mean, not just for work, but also like for digital applications, etc. I think this is where we again probably have a competitive advantage over the digital only companies. And if we put these strengths together, we can definitely create value for everyone involved.
EPRA made a huge mistake to only allocate 40 to 45 minutes about this discussion. I can personally talk hours to all of you on this topic alone and many more topics. Unfortunately, we have to put a stop to this. For all the people who have been attending this, thank you very much for attending. I will share my screen now, and you will have a QR code where you can download the survey. So that is one thing. And next to that, I would like to thank really thank Kirsi, Bastian, Paul, and Achille for their input in the panel together with Andreas. I hope that everyone found this an interesting topic, and I hope that you found it interesting to be part of this panel, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, and from my side, thank you very much for attending this.
Merci.